Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Design Recharge, and I am your host, Diane Gibbs, and I am here with Shauna Lynn Panczyszyn. I think that's it, right?
Yep.
Anyway, so I'm really excited. If you haven't, she is always working on lots of projects, personal projects as well as lots of awesome, great client projects. I don't know how she has time for it, but you're going to get a little bit into her process today. So if you're new, you can chat with us over here on the left-hand side, and if you're watching it recorded, you can't see the chat later, but we'll have the chat underneath below, so you'll be able to kind of roll with it and see what links we shared and stuff. So anyway, we're going to jump into it. Shauna, thanks so much for being here, and give us a little bit of your background and when you started liking design and illustration and lettering.
Well, growing up, I was always my parents always fostered art. You know, they're always like, you can do art, we're always going to have art supplies for you. Like, they always had stuff around the house. I grew up drawing. I grew up playing. Like, we'd visit my grandma in Chicago, and we'd have one of those Xerox paper rolls, and they'd just roll it out with pens and pencils and all that stuff. My little sister and I would sit there for hours. And so it's always been available to me. I've been very, very lucky in that aspect. But like, my mom caught me when I was 3 drawing on the wall. I was always a very quiet child, and she never quite really ever worried about me because I was quiet. But she realized she hadn't seen me in a while, and she walked out to find me in the front hall drawing on the wall with a permanent marker. So we call it my first mural. She even took a picture of it and pictured the cleaners in the corner. And so it was really kind of funny just to see this picture now. And she goes, "This was my best mom move." She goes, "I didn't yell at you." She goes, "You know what I did? I walked in. You're in your own world drawing." And I go, "Shauna, what did you do?" And she goes, you all of a sudden have this moment of like realization where you go, oh no. And she goes, "You know what would have, this is really pretty, you know what would have been better?" And I said, "What, Mommy?" And she goes, "If you'd drawn this on paper so I can keep it, but tell me about it." So I got to tell, I had this whole story. She doesn't remember the story, unfortunately, but apparently there was this whole story to go with these scribbles on the wall, and then after that, everything stayed on paper.
You learned your lesson, but she did a great mom move by just encouraging you to not yell at you at the beginning, but you didn't do it again, so that was good.
Yeah, and she was very encouraging with it, which was good. And growing up, like, if I ever wanted to take an art camp, like, they always made sure there was a way for me to take the art camp. Like, I took photography, I think I really only took photography camps. I don't know why. I did take a few, like, random art camps, but it was mostly like a photography camp, and then I got into figure skating. I did figure skating camps one year, and then I went in 9th grade. I did computer graphics. I was in the IB program, and so we had this option to do the art track, the music track, or the psychology track. I think there was probably a science track too, but I naturally chose the art track. And so in 9th grade, I did computer graphics, which was my first real introduction to Photoshop before it was, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars. This was like Photoshop 3 or something like that. And it was really fun to take the class. We did everything with a mouse. This was the pre-Wacom tablet, so I did these pieces with a mouse, and I look at them now and I don't know how I did them, but I had a love of Comic Sans. I found the folder recently that has all the projects, and it is littered with Comic Sans. I am so embarrassed to say.
Maybe you got it all out of your system.
Yeah, it was a cool font when I was in 9th grade. But after that, I ended up actually switching and doing choir all through. I started singing in 8th grade and did choir all through high school, and ultimately didn't get back into graphic design until I went off to college. And in 9th grade, my dad kept saying, "It's like, you need to do graphic design. You really ought to do graphic design. You got a talent for graphic design. You ought to do graphic design." And he'd done a bit of graphic design when he was, 17, 18, 19, somewhere in there, and he initially wanted to do that before he went into dentistry. So he was very, very encouraging with that. He's like, "You ought to do this." come to find out, there's actually a history in my family of not only are they all doctors, my or no, I don't know if my great-grandfather, he was very smart, I know that. But my grandfather would come home from work and he'd build things. He built a Batmobile for my uncle and my dad. It was like how we had Barbie cars when we were little. My dad and my uncle had a Batmobile.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was. I got to see pictures of it. It was really impressive. He was a heart surgeon, so he was very good with his hands.
Wow.
But he would draw blueprints, and so the drawing thing has kind of trickled down in my family. But I initially went off to the University of North Florida for the opera program, and I got in. Hi, Teddy.
Teddy's making his debut.
He is. And I went in for the opera program, and I lasted a semester, mostly because I was sick. I didn't like practicing, and I went from being, one of the better ones in the choir in high school to suddenly having to really prove myself again, and that was just like I didn't have the energy for that. So I ultimately switched to graphic design because I actually realized I was jealous of all the people walking around with the big art portfolios and the ones drawing around the lake or at lunchtime, and I was like I want to do that. I really want to do that. So I ended up I got my prereqs out of the way, applied for the program, got in, and 3 years later graduated. Got an internship at Brunette Garcia Advertising, the best people in the world. I don't know if any of them are there. Any of them are in here or not, but if they are, say hi. But they're awesome, and I had the opportunity there to really work with lettering. No, you're going to stay. He's trying to get down. I want him to stay for at least a little while.
So you had I think I typed in is that how you spell it, or did I mess it up?
That's right.
Okay, so it was brunettegarcia.com, or that was where you did your internship. So you did. Yeah. He looks all cute.
He just got brushed.
So we'll jump to the Teddy question. Oh, awesome! Thank you.
But they really fostered the lettering there. I did a little bit of it in college, and then when I got there, they're like, "Do this poster." I was like, "Okay."
And we talked about this on the our pre-talk or whatever. Yeah. And a lot of times internships you're really just getting coffee, or you're cutting stuff out, or you're taking photos. You're really not doing much work, but really they let you, and they really saw the potential in you. So they were really some wind under your wings as well, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I credit everything I'm doing now to them. I got so many jobs from the poster I did through them that ended up it got on ComArts, got into the Type Annual. So that was, I mean, incredible, especially since it got in, and I hadn't even been out of school for a year. So it was really fun.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that one actually, it still sits on my wall. Anytime I take pictures of the studio, one of the people from the agency chimes in. She goes, "I love that poster."
So they let you they said, just go for it, and you took it, and then so many people have come to you after and said, "Hey, can we have a foot-inspired poster," or something kind of like that, because you've done some other things that are similar.
Yeah, what it was is they had this rough idea of where they wanted to go, and the creative directors came up to me and said, "Look up all the titles of this guy's plays and draw them out." And I said, "Okay." So for I think 3 or 4 days straight, from like 9 to 5, I was just lettering these titles and really just playing with them, and it was my first true dive into lettering. Like I'd done a little lettering for projects and stuff in college, but this was the first like heavy lettering piece I ever did, and it was just really, really fun, and they ended up anytime people came to them after I was done with the internship and they said, we want lettering like this, who did the lettering, they'd send them my way, which is really unheard of, and I'm so thankful for that, because normally they would just be like, "Oh, we can do this in-house."
Right.
So I got very lucky.
They've really been super strong supporters, and they continue to send you some work, and you've been able to do some great freelance from them.
Mhm. yeah, I got some of my first projects from them, and I've had a lot of fun doing the work I've done for them.
All right, so you grew up. Your dad was a dentist, which going from graphic design to dentistry is totally kind of you would maybe think opposites. I guess hand
Yeah.
skills are really important, and aesthetics. You have to know what looks good. But he was also a business owner, and I
Hmm.
wonder because you are on your own. You've been on your own for almost how many years?
Almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years on February 1st.
So that's a good amount of time to be on your own. Do you think that having that and growing up with that kind of entrepreneurship made a difference to you or impacted you in how you were able to be like, I can go do this on my own?
I think it did, and a lot of it too is just both my parents had a lot of faith in me. For those that don't know, I moved here for a job, and a little over 3 months after starting the job and moving my life for it, they fired me. Um, Yay! So as I called my parents. They live about 40 minutes from here. They flew on the interstate to make it here during rush hour, and so as I'm sitting on the couch, like looking at job listings on my iPad, my parents are like, "Why don't you just try freelancing for a few months? See if it works. You've wanted to try it. This is a good time." At the time, I was still able to be on their insurance for a year, so like you don't have to worry about that. Just go for it. And so a lot of it was, that they just had a lot of faith in me and a lot of emotional support. But a lot of it too was, watching them run their own business for, how old am I now? 26. They started in, I think, '84. So I mean, they've had their business for 30 years. I grew up watching them run their own business. I grew up watching my mom work from home when she needed to work from home, and all the bills and stuff were on the kitchen table, and I mean, for years. And then recently, about I think 5 years ago, my dad approached a company called Heartland, and Heartland bought him out. So he now works for Heartland in his office, but they own it all. So he gets to now focus on the dentistry, and that's in a sense, it's sort of like having an agent, and that's I equate it to that. So it's like they take care of what I can't do.
Or
So
what
it's
or what's not as much fun for you to do, the billing and stuff like
yeah,
that. So how did you so you decided to do freelance. You were already doing
hmm
some freelance.
a little bit.
Little bit, but you had
Yeah.
enough confidence to go ahead and be like, yeah, well, we'll try it. So then did you just say, okay, instead of looking for jobs, I'm going to start looking for an agent? How did you find your agent? I know we're kind of skipping
Yeah.
around on your questions, but
Oh, that's okay. Well, what had happened was actually probably 6 months earlier, I started actually looking at agents, and I had just done it for just the sheer, like, maybe it would bring in some extra freelance because I wasn't very good about approaching companies, and I didn't really know how to go about finding more work. And so I, um, he's just watching. He's like, "Who are you talking to?"
yeah.
Um, but I sent out a few just kind of feelers out there to different agencies, and Illustration was the only one to get back to me. And the talent scout they had said, "I really like your work. I'm going to put it forward to the group and see what they say." And then a couple weeks later, she emailed me back and she said, "It's not ready quite yet, but please continue to send me things." And at that point, that was about when everything picked up like crazy and I moved. So it went on the back burner for a few months, and then when I was fired, and I had about a week that my mom was like, "You're coming home and you're doing nothing and you're going to take a little break." Um, and a week later, I got my first freelance gig with Brain Juicer, which was really awesome. Um, Still don't know how they found me, but in the meantime, I started emailing like some of my past clients. I emailed my contact at Illustration. I said, I've decided to go full time, and you can get down. Come on.
Man, he's fast getting down.
Yeah,
Oh, now we can see him under your arm.
yeah, he's. But I emailed her, and she's like, "Well, just send me what you got," and I'm like, "Okay." So as I finished work, I continued to send it to her, and in the meantime, I emailed several different agencies, probably like 15 of them. I went based on like what looked like it would fit my aesthetic the best. And I had quite a few like, no, you're not ready yet. No, you don't fit the look we go for yet. Yada. Okay, it's fine. And ultimately, I ended up doing a cover for Jacksonville Magazine, which I got through Brunette Garcia. The creative director is married to one of the employees at the agency, and they recommended me to her, and that came about. So I sent that to her once it was done, and that got my agent. She wrote back like a couple days later. She goes, "That's it. That's what we're looking for. Your contract's coming next week."
Wow.
So that was June of last year. So I've been with them about a year and a half now.
So was that, do you think, one of the best things that you've done as a business owner, as a freelancer? And what part do they get you all your jobs?
It's the best thing I could have done for myself, for sure. My first few months freelancing, it was very tough. I didn't know how to contact clients. I didn't know how to promote myself. My mom helped me a lot with like writing emails and making sure things sounded right. We joked that she was my momager, a word that I picked up from Jessica Hish, who also calls her mother that. But it was the best thing I could have done for myself. It's not for everybody. Not everyone enjoys having an agent. Sometimes it's just not a good fit, and I just got incredibly lucky. And they take care of my invoicing. They take care of my contracts. They take care of anything. If there's a contract I have and I don't understand it, I can write back to them and say, please put this in terms I can understand. They're like, sure. And a couple minutes later, they'll write it out. And I do get a good portion of my work from them, but I also get work directly to me. But I've had it laid out on my site that like if you have work inquiries, go to them first. Otherwise, if you send it to me, I'm just forwarding it on to them. So,
because it's so much easier to go through them because they do handle all that stuff that's not very much fun for a designer.
Yeah, and it's in my contract that any new work has to go through them. I have a select handful of house clients that don't ever have to deal with them, and that's all I can work with that don't have to go through them.
Right.
But I do love it.
So, all right, so how do you know when to say no to a project? I mean, do you have to take everything the agent gives you? Do you control what's coming in? And I think, are they in Europe? And how do you deal with like meetings? Because you have a lot of clients. You've done a lot of projects for people across the pond. So how do you deal with meetings?
Well, okay. Well, for example, a client that I have to send work into tomorrow is in the UK. I get everything done the night before. But there's about, I think right now, because of daylight savings, it's a 5-hour difference.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll usually be like if they need a call, it's first thing in the morning for me. So I have to get up and like 9 a.m. I'm on a call with them.
Right.
But usually it's really not too bad. I haven't had any crazy weird time limits yet, which has been nice. But they're based. The agency's based out of London, but they've got offices in London, New York, France, Germany, and I think China and Australia. So they're located all over. So the way they've got it set up is if a U.S. client comes to them, the U.S. agents take care of it. If it's London, the London agents take care of it, et cetera, et cetera. So like I recently had projects with a client in Switzerland. That's what it was, Switzerland, and the German agents took care of it. That was interesting too because the language barrier was something I've never dealt with before.
So if you have like a lettering project that's for another language, have you had to do that?
Yeah. They actually just sent the PDF proof to me so I could see how it ended up looking, which I'll probably get on my site in the next couple of days. But I had to do. I'm gonna probably royally screw this up, but it's Die schönsten aller Zeiten. I don't know. It was like something like "We wish you a Merry Christmas." But the whole project was in German, and I've had maybe I had one project recently that was for chocolate milk. Actually, I gotta check on that, see if that's out in the world yet or not. I had July and August were insane for me. I had no downtime. I had no days off, and I mean it was constant work and it was fantastic, but really it wore me out. But I did do work for a client where I had to do it in English and in Spanish, and that one was a bit easier because I learned Spanish in high school, so I knew the translations enough. But the one in German, I was like, oh God. I sent it back to them, and they're like, they were the nicest people. They were just like, yo, we're just gonna here's where the errors are. Here's where the spelling error. This is actually 2 words, not 1. And I'm like, I'm so sorry.
I think that would be hard, but it's cool that you're doing stuff like that and that you're not turning something down just because it's another language. I think that's really good. You're open to that. So what about saying no? If July and August were so busy, do you end up do you take on more because you're working for yourself, or how do you do that?
I tend to overbook myself quite often.
Mm-hmm.
I think last week was a very good example of that. I put like 3 deadlines on the same day, not realizing it. So I'm still learning how to balance stuff, but it's very rare that I do say no to projects. It's usually if the workload is like this and they can pay only this.
Right.
And unless it's a really fun project, I usually can't afford to take it on because it'll end up working out to be a couple cents an hour.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Yeah, but I did do a project recently for I think one vessel, and they do water bottles and mugs and stuff, and that was. Oh, Jason says he speaks a little Spanish. I did a project for them. It wasn't high paying at all. It was very small, but it was fun, And I'm like, well, I'm not gonna have a chance to work on a water bottle. Like, I'm just gonna do it for fun. And they were, super easy. Like I sent them 3 options. Like, we like this one. Make it like this. Okay. Add some of this. Okay. And it was done. So it was very, very, very easy. I actually had a client a couple weeks ago that the project ended up going a little more in depth than I think they expected, and so they wrote back and they're like, actually, we're going to offer you a little more.
Oh, that's good.
I'm just sitting at my desk and I was like, did that just happen? Did they just offer more? And so I was like, yes, it was worth it. It was a fun project.
Is that something that the agents would handle too? Like if the scope of the project goes beyond?
Yes.
Oh, well, that's good.
I had one in July when it was the crazy month. I had one where they had put someone in charge that wasn't ready to be in charge of the project. It was a big learning experience for her, and she would send emails, and then she'd slip extra things in the email. And so it really forced me to start to really read deep into the emails, because it'd be like this whole thing and then be, oh, and we need this too. And so I'd email my agent and I'm like, I don't think this is in scope. And so she'd write back to her and say, hey, we got to charge for this. You can't just throw this in. And then at one point it was a huge project. And she's like, oh, can you do the packaging for the project too? And I was like, yes. It's out of the scope, so agent, hey. And so the agent took care of that, and we're, okay, it's a die cut. As long as they provide that, I can design it out, sure. And when we received the die cut, there were 5. There were 5 different die cuts, and I write back to my agent, and I said, please correct me if I'm wrong. I was under the impression that there was only 1 die cut. And she writes back, oh, beep, no. And I was like, she was like, oh, God, no, this is not. She goes, no. I expected 1 too. So we went and looked back in the emails, and in between email A and email C, in email B, she's like, oh, and there's a drawer and this and this and this and this that will also be on the template. And we both the agent and I just missed it. And so she wrote back and she's like, okay, we take fault that we missed that, but you can't do that.
Yeah, that's a lot of extra work.
Yeah, and in the grand scheme of things, the drawers really weren't that bad, because it was just it was taking what was done on the main part and just copying that spot over. but it was still like 2 extra things that were going inside the box, and I was like, I have to design these. I have to letter these. Like, I need like 10 hours.
Right.
So
So one thing I think that's fantastic about you is that you have these other personal side projects, and I don't know if that keeps you fueled. Like, one thing I think would be hard that I think you've done great at. You moved to a new city,
mm-hmm.
and you didn't have any friends, and thank goodness you got Teddy. And you can, I mean, that's who he's your he's your water cooler buddy, right? Like,
he's
so
my little buddy.
So take it. So you did that. And I think that's one great thing about working from home is having something to take your mind away from some things. But then you also do these side projects that keep you creative.
Mm-hmm.
But can you kind of take us through a typical day or maybe a typical week?
It varies. I tend to work weekends, so I usually end up working like every day to some extent. The only day that I actually really take time off are Tuesdays. I go to Daytona and I take my skating lesson, and that's like my big I get away, and because my parents are there, I'll usually stop by the house and hang out for an hour or so with them. But usually I see Victoria's.
Yeah,
question. It's usually with illustration that there's agents. There's not usually like graphic design agents that I haven't seen anything like that. But with illustration and lettering and photography, there are agents specifically for that.
You could probably Google that, wouldn't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I found a whole list, or it was just like pages and pages and pages and pages of all these agents. Rule of thumb: if their website doesn't look like it's been updated since 1995, just move on.
And the creative group, who I've interviewed a bunch of times, they will kind of do, for graphic design, they can act sort of as an agent, and they sort of do some of the stuff that Shauna's talking about. Anyway, back to typical day.
But if you want an ideal day, I wake up at 7, I'm working at my desk by 8. If you're talking about the last couple weeks where my sleep schedule has just been out of whack, I'm up at like 8:15, 8:30. I take Teddy downstairs. Sometimes I run into my neighbor and we chit-chat for 30 minutes. And so it depends. But usually I'm usually at my desk by 9 working. I start off my morning with a quick sketch to warm up my hands, because I joke that I've got old lady hands. Because I wake up and they feel stiff, and if I jump into trying to work on my Cintiq, I'm just like, I can't get anything to work. So I actually do have to sit down and sketch with pen and pencil for 15 minutes at least, to just kind of stretch out my hands and work them out a bit before I get moving.
What kind of stuff do you do for that? Like, what's something that you do as a warm-up exercise?
A lot of times it's quotes. Like, I'll think of a theme, I'll Google the theme, and I'll try and find a quote that works for it. Most of them are about yay big. When I sketch them, they're maybe about an inch tall. They're super tiny. But it's also a fun way for me to play with different layouts, different lettering styles, and a lot of times they end up going in becoming full-on prints. So a lot of my side prints that I do for the heck of it were initially like warm-up sketches that I was like, kind of like this, kind of want to make this real.
That's cool.
And a lot I actually went through my look at you. But I go through some of my books. Like, I went through them today to send the sketches to you, and I was like, I want to make some of these real now. I need extra hours in the day, because there's a few that I do really want to make real. It's just finding the time to do that. But if I don't do a quote, I'll sometimes do something for my little clickbait project, which I started in September. I debuted it in October. But it's just like this super silly thing I do I find stupid clickbait on Facebook and stuff as I'm scrolling, and a lot of it is like, if I did it the way that people define clickbait as, it would be a bunch of quotes that said, "She was crying, you won't believe what happened next." And I don't want every one of them ending in "you won't believe what happened next."
Right.
So my personal rule for it is, if it's intriguing enough to make me click on it, it counts. So I've got like several queued up in my list of stuff I want to do. Like I can actually, let me see if I can find it. I was doing one last night and I stopped because it was midnight.
Yeah, I got an email back from you, I think at like 2:30 in the morning, and I was like, wow, you're up late.
Yeah. Oh, here it goes. I saw this one yesterday. Emotional support pig kicked off plane. So I'm lettering it, and I don't know if you can like even see.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But that's where the process is right now.
That's awesome.
So that's one of them, and eventually, there's one I have screenshot on my computer. It's like Drake and Nicki shop for snacks. It's like the stupider it is, the better it is. But I've been having a lot of fun with it, kind of pushing the boundaries, kind of getting away from the chalk a little bit, because lettering is getting very saturated right now. So I'm trying to work to stay one step ahead of the curve, because I don't want to get left behind.
Right, and that's hard because if you're within a really popular trend, I think that's a really smart thing to do as a business owner, is to keep pushing. And you've done so much. You're doing the 12 Days of Christmas, and we talked about that, and I was like, oh, do you have all these already done and you're just releasing them? And you can answer that question.
No, I'm doing them nightly. But I
those
did them
are great.
I did like a couple over the weekend, and I had one day where I got 2 done, and I had it queued up for 2 days, and I was like, cool, I can break. And then like at midnight 2 nights ago, I go, oh, I don't have 5 golden rings done yet. So and I wear contacts. Without my contacts, I can't see crap. You might be able to see my suitcase like way back here. I haven't unpacked from Thanksgiving, so. Thanks, Jason. And so I somewhere in that is my glasses, and I just haven't taken them out. So I'm sitting in my bed. I recently got a Cintiq companion so that I could actually work on the couch or work away from my desk. And so I'm sitting in bed, and it's just like resting on my stomach, and I'm trying to draw the rings, and I don't have my glasses on, I don't have my contacts in. I'm like, I hope I'm filling this in all the way, because it looks bad. So, and the way I set the website up too is so as you scroll, it creates a repeating pattern, and it's the whole image.
So this is the one you did when you didn't have your glasses on?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's one of my favorites. So this is the one that's today.
Yeah, I did that last night at about 10 at night. That one was about midnight. That one I did on the couch, and my dad was like, you need to have one that says yo.
I love how it's incorporated into her wings.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is my favorite. Whoops.
That was my dad's favorite, too. I drew the first chicken in the pink, and he goes, why isn't she wearing a French maid? I'm like, I have 3 to draw.
I love it. I love the little guy with his little tiny legs and her boots. I think there's just so much personality in their faces, like they're a little too good for us or whatever. And these guys are really happy and flying, you know. You do a great job with color, and then you do a great job with your lettering, and with this, it has these fun, like it feels energetic. So you definitely have a lot of energy in your illustrations. And then this is the first one, right?
Yeah, that was the very first one, because I'm in the process. I'm teaching myself to do patterns, because I thought, well, this is a good way to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and work on my illustration and work on patterns, just to teach myself something new. My headphone is slipping off my ear. And so I've got 2 books in my living room right now that are on pattern making, and I've been using those as reference, and I've also been using, there's a Skillshare class that I've been using as well to learn patterns, and a lot of times, like, I play Skillshare classes while I work. I've got 2 monitors, so I've got this main one, and then I've got my little Cintiq down here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm usually working here, so it's usually like Netflix up here, or Skillshare classes, or podcasts, and so I figure, like, if I'm busy working and there's just music playing, like, sometimes music helps, other times it doesn't. So I'll play, like, history podcasts because I love learning. Even though I don't retain, like, 80% of it, I like listening to it, and I'll listen to certain things over and over and over again just for it to kind of sink in. Like, I've like Mary Kate McDevitt recently released her new class, and I am probably on the 20th time listening to it, just because I like hearing the way she goes about it. I like hearing the process and learning different things.
So Andre says, Shauna, are your personal projects online, or do you print any of this to sell? And you do have an Etsy store.
I do. I can actually just type it up.
If you would, that would be awesome, because I don't think I have that one up.
Yeah, I realized this morning I didn't send that. I think that's what it is. I also have a Society 6. Let me see if I can pull that one up. Because I have that as well.
But I think that's one of the things that's so neat, is that you are really, you're very busy, but you also take the time to keep learning, and you take the time to push yourself.
Yeah, I'll have to look that one up, Jason. I've been listening to Stuff You Missed in History class.
Oh, yeah.
I love that one. Every time I hear the podcast, I'm like, I wish it was longer, because I could listen to them talk for hours.
That's cool.
I just found one the other day. I think it's called the Hardcore History Podcast. I started listening to it when I was driving home the other day, and one of them is 4 hours long. So
you'll like that one.
Yeah, it'll keep me busy.
So, all right, so let's get back to your day.
Yeah.
So you're doing these exercises in the morning. You look at books. You love books. You have lots of books.
Oh, I love books.
Is there any that you tend to go to regularly?
I can show you.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I have so many books right now. I have to get another bookshelf because I can't fit them all. So I have, like, the main ones. I've got a set over here that's actually displayed as a bookshelf on my desk. But I've got this one, antique packaging. And this one's really nice because it's just, like, all these great examples of these pretty packages. So this is antique packaging, Joseph Magaroff. I don't know. I'll hold it up here because I can't pronounce that.
M-A and then Garrof and with an accent.
Yeah.
E.
And another one is the Handy Book of Artistic Printing.
Oh, cool.
And this one is beautiful. I mean, it's just like all these examples of these ornate designs.
Oh, wow.
And so I have this one at the ready often because it's just so cool. Like when it came in the mail, I just sat and nerded out for probably 30 minutes straight. I've got label art, and it's just a Dover book.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just all these different fruit crate labels.
Yeah, those are great.
Which I discovered I love because I found one in a local antique store, and I wanted just one, and it was a pack of 30, and they wouldn't separate it, so I was just like, I'll find it somewhere else. But fruit crate labels, I just love them. This one I found online on eBay. It's called Letters and Lettering by Paul Carlisle and Guy Oring, and it's like almost like a how-to book.
Oh, cool.
And they've just got all these different styles, and it was funny because when I was going through it, I don't know if it's still in here. I wonder if I think I kept it in, but I found someone had been using it. It smells like old book. So great. Someone was practicing.
Oh, cool.
But it was like they must have just left it in the book and didn't think. So I got someone's random practice in this old book.
It's like a treasure inside a treasure.
It is. And then one of my favorites is the Encyclopedia of Advertising Tins.
Mary Kate talks about that in her first Skillshare class, I think.
That's how I heard about it, and I got it for like $4, and now it's over $100.
Ooh, good for you on the steal. That's awesome.
I got lucky because it was just. I looked it up recently, and it's like over $100, and I'm like, okay, this is a good book, but I would not pay that much money for it because they're not. I mean, there's some fantastic samples in here, but they're all really small.
Yeah.
But there are some really good ones in here, and my old illustration teacher actually was able to find it for a good price somewhere else, but it's like $100 on Amazon. And I think that's just a matter of like supply and demand, because right now like my book is sold out, but someone was selling it for $100 and something used, and I'm like, it just came out. Who is selling it for $100?
Yeah, I told you I bought it as soon as like it, but they still haven't. They're like unavailable until whenever, and I'm like, ah. And you said, oh, it's at Barnes and Noble, and I'm like, but we don't have a Barnes and Noble anymore. So anyway, Meredith says she just looked through your Etsy shop, and I'm pregnant and now hoping I have a girl so I can buy your sugar and spice print for the nursery.
Aw, how fun!
You could buy it anyway. I'm sure a little boy wouldn't care.
And I'm actually planning. I've got so many mentally in progress. Like there's one on there that says it's a cool thing to be a smart girl, and of course there was the one person that commented on an Instagram post that was like, "Why is it just girls? Isn't it a cool thing to be smart boys?" I'm like, I haven't gotten to that yet.
It's just cooler to be a girl.
I know. I'm like, just take it at face value. It's just cool.
So Jason wants you to talk about your book. So. And I'll try to find it and put a link, even though Amazon's out right now, but they can buy it.
I can actually provide. There's a link on my site.
Okay, perfect. I can find it if I can get it. You talk about it.
I can talk. I can multitask.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah. What exactly do you want to know about the book? Just like general stuff, or?
So how were you contacted, or did you make a proposal, or?
They actually approached me. They said, we have this book we want to do. Here's the link, and it has a list of places to find it at.
Cool.
We have this book on lettering. We really would like you to be a part of it. We'd like you to cover chalk letter, and you'll get 30 pages. And I was like, okay. Cool. I've got nothing. It was during my very slow period this year that I'm hoping doesn't happen next year. January through June were very, very slow. I had maybe 2 projects. It was very sad. A lot of inquiries in January, including one from Target that just never went through.
Bugger.
I was like, but when that came through, I was like, well, this is cool. This is fun. And they said anything you create for it, any prints, you can sell. So I was like, works for me. So I had to sit and like come up with all these different prompts and these different exercises, and I had to actually make sure that I saved every step of the process so that I could show, the beginning, the first step, second step, third step, final. It was just, it was a lot of work, but it was really fun, and I got to focus. And I did it all digitally because I don't work with real chalk. I've worked with real chalk maybe a handful of times, and I don't like it only because I'm very big on texture, and I don't like when it squeaks.
Yeah. I actually don't like there's something about I'll work with it, but I don't know, it gives me the EBGBs.
Yeah, it gives me, like, chills.
Yeah.
Not in a good way, yeah. Like, you can kind of see it, but I've got my chalkboard here.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, I figured I would do that so I could, practice and actually have experience working with an actual chalkboard. And so my best friend came to visit me a couple months after I'd done that, and she goes, oh, can I draw on it? And I was like, sure, here's chalk. And she goes, I was like, oh! I was like, you have to stop. I'm like, you're making it squeak.
So how do you do your process then? So you're doing it all on the Cintiq, and so what's the difference between the Cintiq that you have sitting next to you and the one that can go by the couch?
The big difference is the one here can't act on its own. I had to have it plugged into a computer in order for it to work, and it's basically just it's a monitor. The companion is something that I held off on for a long time before I actually bit the bullet and got it. And I had to relearn Windows because the big difference is you can't plug it into a computer to use it like you would a normal Cintiq. It's an actual computer. It doesn't really weigh any more than the actual Cintiq that I have on my desk, which is nice, but it is a Windows-based computer. And now that I'm used to it, I am in love with it. and it's touch based, so like you can zoom by using your fingers, and you move around with your hand, and so I'll find myself sitting here like trying to make this one move, and I'm like, why is this? So, but it was so convenient, because a lot of times there's been a few instances this year where I've gone home for a couple days when I have deadlines, and at the time I had to take my I had to take my laptop, the Cintiq, my cords, my drive, my this, my that, and I basically took over the kitchen table.
Right.
But like earlier this year, when I was working on the book, I had a deadline for it, and my dad had neck surgery. He had some vertebra fused. So initially, like, my mom was going to come home that night, and I was just going to bring everything home and just stay the night. But I was going home to take the dog out, and I ultimately ended up being alone all night because Dad didn't want to be alone either.
Sure.
But it helped that it sucked having to undo everything and take it all with me, because I had to undo this whole setup. I had to get all the cords out from behind my computer, and that's just a mess as it is. And
oh yeah.
So yeah, and so getting the companion, I mean, I literally sat on it for probably 4 or 5 months before I actually said I'm just gonna do it. And I talked it through with my mom, and I'm like, I don't know if I should. And I'm like, this is the pros of it, and it's the cons. She's like, just get it. So, and she goes, just get it. If you don't like it, you return it.
But
And
it's a big investment.
it is. It was a big investment, and ultimately completely and totally worth it, because I can take it to the coffee shop, and I can work at the coffee shop. I was able to go home Thanksgiving, and I didn't have to take 20 bags with me in order to take home my setup. I have a tiny little hard drive that I put what I was working on, and I took the little Cintiq, I set up the table, and I looked at my mom and I said, look, I only take up a quarter of the table.
So with that Cintiq, is it do you still connect to your Adobe cloud?
Yeah, I'm not using the laptop really anymore. I have it as a backup for traveling and such, but I have my Adobe Cloud on this computer, and I have it on that computer.
And so it doesn't matter that your one's PC and one's Mac?
No, because I looked that up too.
That's good. Yeah, because that would be extra expense.
It would, and that was the thing I was really worried about. I got very lucky that I have Creative Cloud for a year. I won it at Creative South last year. So that was exciting, because I don't have to pay for it for a few more months. And so before I went and I invested in it too, I made sure I did Google search and made sure it could work on both PC and Mac before I bought that, because I didn't want to end up spending $50 a month just to use that.
So you had the other Cintiq. So one thing that I've heard people say, it takes a little bit to get used to it. Did you have a small Wacom tablet before, and then you moved to the Cintiq? And then was there any learning curve besides just the operating system of going to the companion?
Not really. I mean, I had the Intuos for years. Yeah. Actually, and going back to that now, I feel like a 5-year-old holding a pen for the first time. I did a demonstration for a while at my old illustration class, and I was like, guys, I promise I can draw better than this. I've not used a tablet like this in forever. But going from that to a Cintiq, there was almost no learning curve. I actually saw an improvement in my work, which was amazing, and actually unexpected. So it was really fun, and it allowed me to get a lot more detailed. It allowed me to get a lot more accurate with things, and I got faster because of it, because I wasn't, drawing down here and looking up here and trying to make it all work.
Yeah.
And there was a slight learning curve going from this to the Cintiq tablet, because it's touchscreen. So I've got this glove that I wear when I work on that, because I would be like drawing, and then my palm would activate something, and so.
Oh yeah.
It was a little bit of a learning curve, but now I've had it for about 2 weeks now, and it's totally fine.
So are you using Illustrator? Jason asked this question. Are you drawing in Photoshop, or what are you using?
I use only Photoshop. The only time I've ever used Illustrator is if the client wants a logo, and I draw it all in Photoshop first, and then I just find a way to live trace it, because I don't like Illustrator. And you can't replicate chalk in Illustrator.
Right.
You can replicate the ink style, but when it comes to chalk, I actually had a client that really wanted it was actually the Germany client. they wanted it in Illustrator. They're like, we want it vector, and I said, well, you want it in chalk, right? And they're like, yeah, and I said, not going to happen.
Yeah,
it's not going to look real. And right. I think it ended up getting switched to an ink look in the end because they wanted something bolder, but I still didn't give them vector files. I was like, it's going to retain this shape better if we just do a 600 DPI and you do it from there. But
so you would take but you start out with sketches. You're on paper with sometimes, I guess, right? And you use a certain kind of pencil. And why? Why do you use a pink pencil?
I did it because I tend to be very sketchy when I first start, and I hate erasing because it just makes my paper messy, and sometimes the eraser sucks and it just smears it everywhere, and I don't like when it smears. And so I just one day, like, I decided to play around, and I have a little mechanical pencil that I put pink lead in, and I just started sketching, and then I drew over it in a darker pencil, and I just partially I liked the aesthetic of it. It looked really cool. But I also really liked how it let me just really play with the layout and really play with the placement without committing to anything. And then when I pull it into the scanner and I scan it in, I can convert it to grayscale, play with the levels, and the pink goes away. So you just have my dark drawing. So
that's like a lot of illustrators will use blue or red, or I haven't heard pink, and I didn't know there was pink lead, so it'll be something I'll look into. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
It's Pilot Color Eno. It's on Jet Pens. That's the only place I've found it.
I love that place.
Oh, they ought to sponsor me. I love them so much. But yeah, they've got pink, they got blue, they got purple. I've got like different colors in my little. I've got a thing of lead.
Oh, cool. But you gravitate towards the pink to start.
Yeah, because pink is fun. I have purple too. Like, I'll do pink and then I'll go over it a little more and define things more, like in a darker, like a purple. And then I finally go to a trusty 2B, and then I get really tight with everything.
So, like with the patterns, are you doing that completely on the Cintiq, or are you starting out with some sketches, and then what's your process with that?
With the patterns, it's actually just straight onto the Cintiq. I have not done any sketches for those. I just start drawing and go for it.
Because you're having fun. You're just practicing. You're learning. You're growing. It's
not for a client. It's just something to push my boundaries. Because I find if I do a sketch with illustration, I overthink it, and then I sit and I'm like, oh, I don't like how this looks, and it's not looking how I want it to. And so I can just jump right into the computer and I just start drawing it and get it over with.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and then I pass the ugly stage, and it's good.
So one other thing I think is great, and when we talked before, so you have these morning exercises, you get warmed up, which I think is really good, and it also makes you expand your personal work, your Etsy stuff, your Society 6 stuff, your, all these side projects, helps you keep going. But then you work, and you do your work, and you go ice skate on Tuesday. And then you also do stuff at night, which I think is so funny because you didn't want to do opera because you had to practice so much. So this does not feel like work, I guess, to you because you are you do it all the time. And so tell us about your night routine.
Oh gosh, my mom always gets on me because I never stop. But it's, for me, it really is. It rarely ever feels like work. To me, it's fun. Like, even when I was briefly in the opera program, I always had a sketchbook on me. I was always drawing. Even in my dorm with my best friend, we met our freshman year. We both auditioned for the opera program on the same day, and she auditioned right before me. Ultimately, we both got in, decided to be roommates, and both dropped out of the program. She went on to be a teacher, and then now she's living in New York, and then I'm here, and got to see her for the first time in 8 months on Friday of last week, so that was really nice.
Cool.
Yeah, it was a brief, like, she was driving from her place, her home, her parents' house, to Jacksonville, and my hometown is the exact middle point. And we were going to get together for lunch, and I was so swamped with deadlines, I was like, I can't do lunch. And I said, are you free anywhere else? And she goes, I'm driving to Jacksonville on Friday. And I said, stop in Port Orange. We'll hug at a gas stop. So we literally, like, I pulled into the gas station. I left my dad at the office. I was helping him decorate. I drove down the road to the gas station. She was standing there, and we hugged, and we talked for 20 minutes, and then off she went.
Sometimes that's good, though.
Yeah, but, I mean, she can even vouch that. I mean, every night in the dorm I was drawing. I had art supplies like crazy, and she had this thing where, because we live together, we've known each other for about 8 years now, and for about 6 of those years we lived together. And she would come into my room as I was working on projects, and she's like, let me help. Okay. So I hand her my pen, and she'd just go with my pen, and she'd do one line, and she goes, okay, I helped, and she'd walk out of my room. So
are the nightly exercises like the same as the morning ones, or do you do different stuff at night?
A lot of time lately at night it's been the patterns. Sometimes it's clickbait, and then sometimes I find myself just getting distracted by Reddit, and I sit on my phone on Reddit for hours. But a lot of times, like, I'll go to the couch and I'll turn on like Family Guy, and I'll just marathon something, and I'll just start drawing like different words, different phrases. It depends. A lot of times, though, it is just kind of playing a love. I was reading something as I was speaking. But it is playing with different like quotes and different styles, and just really seeing what I can push at night.
Do you think that's one of the ways that you've been able to stretch yourself, because you have these times for play?
Yeah. If I didn't make time for play, I would go crazy.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, like I have to have time that I set aside for myself to do personal work, even if it never gets past like a sketch stage. As long as I'm doing something that kind of lets me mentally check out for a little while and just get into the work, I'm good.
Well, Shauna, we got through 7 questions. Maybe not even 7.
I know, and I tangent.
Well, we'll have to just have a part 2. If you're up for it, we'll do a part 2. But I know. So I'm sharing your links again. But what are some ways that people could? Are you doing any workshops or any speaking engagements or anything like that?
Well, if you're in Orlando, it's still TBA, but right now it's set for sometime in January. I'm going to be doing a lettering workshop with AIJ Orlando. Otherwise, I will be speaking at Creative South in April. So, yay! I'm very excited about that, because Creative South was my first conference I ever attended, and I ended up actually attending on a whim because it was affordable, and I was like, oh, it's close by, let's carpool. And so one of my best friends here and I carpooled up to it, and we had a great time, and definitely I'm going to be an attendee for life because I just loved it. So if you haven't gotten your ticket to Creative South, you should get your ticket to Creative South, because it really is fantastic. I met you walking in the door of the hotel.
Yeah, it was it's still $80 for 2 days, and it really was. I know we talk about it a lot on here. I think it's a .com, Creative South GA. .com, but it is, and I love the workshops too. I don't know if you got to do any of the workshops. Did you?
I didn't. We ended up driving up on workshop day, and we had 2 other guys with us, so we were all we were waiting for like them to to get them. We didn't leave till like 10 in the morning, and got in at like 5 that afternoon. So it was a bit of a haul for us, but we did make it to the opening party, so that was worth it.
Yeah.
And go ahead. I was say that's where I ended up. Like, I met Peter. He walked up and he's like, "Are you Shauna?" And I was like, "Yes."
Yeah.
It's really fun.
It was really, people are really, there's a lot of humble, amazing artists, but if you can do the workshops are great. They do cost a little bit more. I know Mina, I think she did all the workshops last year with Anne, and I did a few of them, and they were incredible, and I'm going to do my best to get all of them this year. So I'm excited you're going to be speaking.
I'm very excited. Once I find out what the workshops are, if I can get it to where, because my friend and I are also carpooling again this year, so if I can get it scheduled where we both can make it up on time, I'll probably do a workshop. Otherwise, I'll just have to hear it from everybody else.
Well, Shauna, it's been great. We just have to get the rest of them. But I think you've given us some great tools to use on a daily basis. Get up, get your hands started, and don't get so frustrated that you stop doing it. And if you're frustrated, just go straight to the computer and don't feel like you have to be married to something. I think for illustration wise, I think that's a great lesson. And I love the patterns. I think it's great that you did one without your glasses. You should do more.
I know. Oh, it's so frustrating. I had the computer like here though. I can't see.
Well, anyway, it's been great. So I'm going to share some more the links again, just so people know. I guess Parmesan is easier to spell than your last name, except I do know how to spell it. It's pretty unique that you have 2 Z's and 2 Y's in your last name. That's pretty cool.
Thanks, Ukrainians.
Yeah. So ShaunaParmesan.com, and I believe that's like your Twitter, your Instagram, your
It's pretty much all the handles, I think.
And then you have 2 side projects that you talked to us about, the clickbait project, which I shared earlier, which I'm going to share again, and then the 12 patterns of Christmas. And that's something you're doing now, and you have there will be pretty much every day you're doing
and once I hit 12, I'm going on to new versions. So after this round, it's going to be the Alan Sherman version, and then after the Alan Sherman version, it's going to be the Bob and Doug version. So
yeah, that's awesome. So I will be watching that, but can you say it now? I can say Panczyszyn, right? I said it. I did pretty good. I worked on it.
Through researching our family, we actually discovered it used to be spelled differently, and up north it's Panczyszyn, but we don't say Panczyszyn down here. We say Panczyszyn because no one can say it anyways. My dad goes by Dr. P, so.
Well, that's all. I think it's good. Well, Shauna, this was the last one of 2014, so thank you for wrapping it up. Well, I'm going to get back in touch with you because Ashley is going to have a baby, and so I'm going to be my own putting people together for a few months. I get her back in March, I hope. So if she'll have me back. So hopefully we'll have a beautiful little girl, baby, second baby for Ashley, so I'm real excited for her. So I will be contacting you to try to get it scheduled. But thank you for wrapping up the year for me. It's been great. I've been wanting to have you on for a long time, so I'm really glad we got to do it. And if you're new to Design Recharge today, it's every Wednesday, except not anymore in 2014, but we actually are starting back up on January 1st. So when you're watching football or something, or you don't want to watch football and you're done eating, you can come and watch Design Recharge at 2:30 Eastern, 11:30 Pacific. So we'll be having we'll start back then, and if you want to get on the email list, it's just designrecharge.org, and I'll share a link. And I thank you everybody for watching, and thanks for making it a great year for Design Recharge. And Shauna, I'm really excited that you're going to be speaking at Creative South, and I'm excited that I'm going to get to have you back on. And I'm sorry we only had 7 of the 14 questions answered.
Oh, that's okay.
Teddy got to make an appearance.
He did, and he's probably now on the couch or in my suitcase. He's been laying in the suitcase.
Well, I'm really excited, and thank you so much, and I will see y'all in a month, I guess. Just about.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Shauna. Bye, everybody.